Golly gee, Florida State stumbles right out of the gates in Dublin. I'm wearing my Georgia Tech gold. Ain't that right, Gojo? That's right. I'm going to go over an updated top 25 as well as some of the prospects that stood out this weekend. I'm Broshmo. It's football, bro. That's right. You can catch this live on the YouTube, or if you prefer audio, you could check out it on any of the podcasting platforms. I'll leave links for those in the description. But let's go ahead. Let's get into this sucker. Let's talk about what actually transpired this past weekend when it came to that Dublin game, that Georgia Tech, Florida State. Because it started out with a bang, right? It started out with a bang. It was kind of nuts. It was kind of wild. You had back-to-back scores by both squads. It looked like it was going to be this big Russian affair. And then suddenly the offenses went inept. They went phallic. It just wasn't pretty. It was like, okay, man, this is going to be a bit of a dogfight. It kind of was. And the big thing that stuck out about Florida State, because I know DJU, we're going to talk about them a little bit later when we go over some of the prospects from this game. A lot of people are giving DJU a lot of hate, and I don't think a lot of that is deserved. Was he perfect? No. Was he great? No. Was he good enough? I believe so. I believe he was good enough. Was he wildly inaccurate at times? Yes. Was there maybe a poor decision or two in there? Probably. But he was good enough to win this game. He was good enough to win this game. Like, the guy didn't have like a turnover worthy play. Sure, he had that deep ball that luckily was a pass interference, eventually led to a score. And that, honestly, that was probably, outside of the opening drive, that was probably Florida State's biggest play, which is kind of wild. But aside from that, like, this defense was not good for Florida State. It wasn't. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't get pressure on Haynes Keene. And to be fair, a lot of that was schemed up by the Georgia Tech offense. They did a good job of putting guys in motion, getting the ball out quickly, whether it was like screens, RPOs, and such. See? Gojo, Keelan, they're not happy about it. They're not. And it wasn't a pleasure to see Florida. I mean, I guess it was. It was kind of a pleasure to see Florida State go down. I mean, it was like, I was saying the previous week, right? The whole build-up. Georgia Tech plus 10.5. Give me that. Give me that easy money. I didn't expect them to win the game. Georgia Tech played a great game. Does that mean they're going to be this like top contender? Absolutely not. I don't think so. Unfortunately, I don't think they're good enough for that. They can be an 8-win team. They certainly can. I don't know if they're going to be vying for the playoff. Maybe they just prove me wrong. That would be awesome. It's just, I don't think Florida State's as good as we anticipated them to be. And to be fair, this is the opening week. We might see teams, well, go with the slow approach. Maybe we see these teams that are just being put on the stove and they take a little time to boil. I'm going to talk about Penn State a little bit later when we look at this upcoming week's games. By the way, we're going to be doing a watch along all day. We're going to be streaming, having a watch party for 3 games on Saturday. That's going to be a ton of fun. I'm hoping not to lose my voice. But like, at the end of the day, man, Florida State just came out, and now they have to be essentially perfect the rest of the year. They have to be perfect the rest of the season. And the question is, can they do that? I mean, shoot, let's just go ahead. Let's take a quick look at Florida's schedule, which, I mean, I don't think it's favorable. I wouldn't call it favorable. But, I mean, the next 4 games, I guess 5, because we'll talk about SMU in a second, but Boston College should be a win. I know it's Bill O'Brien, but still, that's new head coach there. Memphis might be their toughest matchup there. Don't sleep on Memphis. And then, I mean, to be fair, they get that in Tallahassee, so that's kind of nice. Cal, and then SMU. But then Clemson, Miami, Hurricanes, baby. Do you. North Carolina, which still, I mean, I feel like North Carolina, okay, you lost some things, but there's enough players coming back to where I'm like, okay, you just can't sleep on them. Notre Dame and Florida. I think if you're going to compete in the ACC, you might only have one loss left in you. That's just me. But regardless, let's keep this sucker going. Let's talk about the only other game that I did watch this weekend. I guess I should highlight at least the games that I didn't watch. Montana State, they end up beating New Mexico. Awesome. I mean, 21 points for Montana State in the fourth. I did see the highlights. Looked kind of dope. But let's talk about this SMU team. Because they were like 24, 27-point favorites to Nevada. And they came out, and they didn't look great. This team couldn't run the ball successfully for a majority of the game. I mean, you saw some good things from, what was the cat's name? Brashard Smith, I think. You saw some good things from him, but ultimately, like, this team couldn't consistently run the football. Preston Stone was fine. He was fine. It was nothing special. I mean, shoot, they were going with like a 2-quarterback approach at times. To be fair, I mean, they brought in, what was it, Kevin Jennings on more like scripted and schemed up plays, but still, like, hey, you got Preston Stone. He's your quarterback. Don't worry about who his backup is. Why you got his backup on the field? What are we doing here? What are we even doing? But Preston Stone ends up having 2 big-time throws, with one being the game winner there to R.J. Maryland. Fun fact, we'll talk about him in a little bit. But turnover-worthy play, which resulted in the interception. He was only he had an adjusted completion percentage of 66.7%. Like, this was a team that kind of lucked out at points. Like, you had the safety, and like Nevada, it should have never been this close. And you're kind of hoping with SMU, if you're an SMU guy or gal, that this is this is a team you set on the stove, they'll boil. Just wait. When they get hot, they'll get hot. To be fair, they have the schedule that kind of permits that. Like, it's not exactly a difficult schedule. It's not exactly a hard schedule for SMU. That's why, like, I have them in my top 25, which we'll talk about in a sec. Because again, Florida State losing out of the gates, you got to move things. So I was like, okay, let's just do a quick adjustment to the top 25 going into week 1. But yeah, I mean, we can talk about the SMU defense, or we can talk about what SMU defense. Like, they got ran on. How many rushing yards did? Okay, so Nevada puts up like 155 rushing yards. Brendan Lewis, the quarterback, to be fair, he was the quarterback. So, okay, you're not mad. You're not sad the quarterback is going to run on you. But you would think you would kind of anticipate that going into the game, and you'd prepare for it. But it is what it is. He ends up going for 85 yards. Really, the only pulse that they had in this game, or maybe you had Elijah Roberts, who had 5 pressures, didn't come up with the sack, though. In the run game, though, it's not like he was anything special. You really had no one really stepping up for SMU on this defense. I mean, you had Jafari Harvey, former Hurricane. Do you, baby, do you? But he had one play. Where it was like, okay. I mean, it was big time, but still, nonetheless, SMU, I'm a little worried about. Everybody loves the NFL draft, and I know you want to be familiar with every potential prospect that your team may draft. So I got good news for you. My draft guide is available for purchase. It is good throughout the entire draft cycle, and it updates through the season regularly. You'll get my current evals and rankings on hundreds of different players with player backgrounds and analytics. It also contains combine and pro day numbers, as well as my notes from the Senior and Shrine Bowl. You can purchase it for a one-time payment of $30 on PayPal, Venmo, and now I have the Cash App. Follow the link in the description and be sure to include your email because it is a Google spreadsheet. That is how I share it with you. So please don't make me hunt down your email. Just don't do it. Anywho, it's a great purchase and it's a great way to support the channel. Okay, let's talk top 25. Like I said, really, it's going to be a marginal change with Florida State falling down. So among this just missed it list, again, if you don't know how I do my top 25 every year, I go in, I look at the schedule, and I adjust accordingly. I don't go in based on, oh, I think this team's good, this team's good, this team's good. No, I look at the strength of schedule and I project it. So you're going to look at this top 25 and what I'm hoping to accomplish by that it's going to look a lot closer to what it is prior to the college football playoff, like right before. I'm hoping that this will be similar to what it looks like at the end of the year, rather than having these open, like just having one with just good teams on it. Like, to me, that's like, why? Let's project this, and then let's adjust it accordingly from our projections. So these teams I just missed, obviously Georgia Tech is going to be in the fold here. I mean, this is a team, like, honestly, you look at their schedule, they could win like the next 3 or 4 games and probably end up in my top 25. And if this is a team better than anticipated, like, I already thought like they were a solid enough team, but I was figuring more around that like 7-5 area. But if they end up being like 8-4, maybe 9-3, then certainly, yes, they're going to be they should be included in a top 25. But I'm very conservative. Is that the word I'm looking for? I'm very careful. I'm very I like to wait and see before I move these teams up and down. I don't try to be overreactional. If that's a word. I don't try to overreact. There we go. That's probably a better way to put it. I don't try to overreact to things on the week by week basis. Instead, I try to go with, okay, this team's just not been good the last few weeks. Let's move them down a few spots. So Georgia Tech, they're going to be in this just missed it list. They'll maybe sit here for a few weeks, and they might have to wait for some of these teams maybe to lose some of these big games. Because keep in mind, with college football, the way that it is currently, we're going to get more of these bigger games early. We are. Some of the usual suspects, you got USC, you got Oklahoma. To be fair, they are in year one of their new conferences. So there might be a learning curve. There might be a bit of a struggle there. Virginia Tech is one of my underdogs, like one of my sleepers. I think they could end up being very, very good this season. And I think they could even be like a 9-win team. So, like, don't sleep on Virginia Tech. That's a team with a ton, and I mean a ton, of prospects. Let's go ahead. Let's actually talk about this top 25, starting with, we got Oklahoma State. They are probably the most veteran team on this list. I just think they probably drop a couple. I think they're going to be in the race for the Big 12. And again, yes, this is a team that I think returned like the most starters than any other Power 4 school this season. But I don't believe in, was it Bowman at quarterback? The 7th-year senior or something? I don't believe in him. But I got him here at 25. Toledo, I like the coach. I like Jason Candle there. He does a good job. Could be a down year, but maybe the MAC sneaks in their conference champion in the top 25. Kansas, I love Kansas. I love the coaching staff. I love a lot of the players on the team, whether it's like Devin Neal, Kobe Bryant. But if we're going to be real, if we're going to be honest, Jalen Daniels, can you stay healthy? If he can, this team's going to probably finish higher than this. UTSA, this is another case where I just really like the coach. They did lose a lot of stars, but they brought in some good transfers. But I am a big sucker for Jeff Traylor. So I got them out there winning the AAC. Florida State, this is where I end up dropping them, 21. And this is a big drop. This is a huge drop. Already, as I kind of projected, they could be your ACC champions. For me, it's kind of this 3-team race with Miami and Clemson. And for me, it was a bit of a toss-up. So I had them relatively high on my board. I think they were at 11 previously. They take the big drop. They stumble out the gates. And listen, if Miami stumbles out the gates and loses to Florida, to be fair, that's a good Florida team, but a good Florida team with a tough schedule. That might be a good 7-5 Florida team, but they'll drop as well if they can't win. Can Miami win the ACC for the first time ever? Why am I talking about Miami when we're supposed to be talking about Florida State? Well, because we're talking about the ACC. But Florida State, I ended up dropping them. It's a pretty big drop. It's a pretty big drop. Let's go ahead. Let's move on to that next slate of teams here, as Kansas State probably ends up my biggest riser, just because like going back and like looking, it's like they have a very friendly schedule. And sure, like Avery Johnson, I believe that's the new quarterback there, Avery Johnson. You can correct me if I'm wrong, doing this off the top of my head. So I am willing to be wrong, but new quarterback there. But I believe in the talent. Probably ranked them a little bit too low. I think initially I had them at like 22. So 20 feels a bit better. Tennessee, I like Tennessee. They got some players, they got some ballers, they got some playmakers. We will see Nico in his first full year as a starter. Just saw him in the bowl game last year. And some people were a little butthurt. I imagine Tennessee fans were butthurt with my position of them on this list. But hey, it's his first year in the SEC. It can't like they can be 9-3 and good. I would consider that a success. So yeah, I feel like this is a good spot for him. Louisville, don't sleep on Louisville. They actually did a good job with the transfer portal, though they did take a big hit with Colin Lacey. I don't know how long he's out for, but it sounds like it might be for the year or a large part of the year. That's kind of a big hit, the South Alabama wide receiver. But hey, they got my boy, Tyler Shuck in town. They got a better than you would expect defense. Like this defense lost some players last year, but they still got some hella good players. They didn't lose as much as some people think. SMU, I'm just going to keep them here at 17. I think this is where I had them initially. I'm not moving them. I do think they have probably the easiest schedule among any of the AAC teams or ACC teams. So we're going to keep them here. We're going to say, okay, this is a team that kind of came out in the opener, tripped, fell on their face, but they were able to recover and got the win in dramatic fashion. LSU 16, Garrett Nussmeier. I'm a believer. I want to be a believer in Garrett Nussmeier. I've said the last couple of years, this is probably the best backup in college football right now. Garrett Nussmeier is legit. How much will the defense improve? Because this defense has been a liability. So we shall see. Also, you lost 2 first-round wide receivers and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. It's like, sure, they got the talent there to supplement those guys, but to replace those guys. But you're not going to entirely replace 2 first-rounders. You're just not. You're just not. All right. At 15, I got my Miami Hurricanes, the U, baby, the U. I want to believe in the U, but man, they make it hard to believe in them. They just do. And a lot of that is Mario Cristobal. I don't know if he's the guy. I remember going back, we got Cristobal, and I was like, I guess that's fine. And then Dan Lanning ends up going to Oregon. I was like, how does Oregon lose their head coach to another team and then somehow get a better coach? I wish I knew Dan Lanning was available. I wanted Dan Lannon. Is what it is, but nonetheless, the talent's there for Miami. They did well in the transfer portal. I really hope that I really hope it means something. We're gonna have to win games, and it starts this weekend. Clemson, they're a hard team to bet against because the talent is there. I might personally not necessarily believe in Cade Klubnik. A lot of that is just a little bit of the stink from his his freshman season, though we did see him for a little bit because DJU was mainly the quarterback there. But it's not like he was that impressive last year. It's not. But the talent's there. They're a hard team to bet against. So currently I have Clemson as my top ACC team here at 14. At 13, Arizona. They do have a tough stretch of football. They got questions. I'm not too familiar with Brent Brennan, the former San Jose State head coach, now head coach of Arizona, but they were able to bring back Fafita. They were able to bring back McMillan. They were able to bring back Tacario Davis. This team still got talent. They bring the transfer from San Jose State over there to Arizona. They got a decent backfield. Because they brought in, who was it from New Mexico? They brought in Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. He did initially commit to Arizona, then he decommitted, went to Ole Miss. Ole Miss's backfield is just loaded. So he was like, yeah, maybe I should just go back to Arizona. So here he is. He's here at Arizona. But they also brought in former San Jose State running back. Here it is. Was it Quali Conley? Who wasn't half bad last year. 842 yards rushing, 251 yards receiving. His forced missed tackle rate was kind of nuts at 0.34. His yards after contact were kind of nuts at 4.31. So hold the phones. We might have something here. So don't sleep on Arizona. They do have a tough stretch. I think it's like a 3-game stretch. Liberty's at 12. I think they have the easiest schedule in college football. It's as simple as that. They may have like 2 tough games, one of them being at home. They're in conference games, but to me, they should be undefeated, or if anything, a one-loss conference champion. That should be good enough to get into the college football playoff. Oregon's probably my hottest take. Listen, if I was doing this without taking the schedule into account or what I think is going to happen, Oregon's a top 3 team in terms of talent. Like I think Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, those are your most talent-rich teams currently in college football. But Oregon's going to have to get a big win over Ohio State. They're going to get Ohio State in Eugene, fortunately, and I think that's a winnable game for them. It truly is, but let's look at the rest of their schedule. Don't sleep on Boise State. I say don't sleep on Boise State. Like Boise State's going to come in and upset. They're not, but I still like that I could see that being one of those. Again, I go back to this reference. You just put it on the stove. The stove's not quite warm enough. Then again, Dan Lannon teams, they typically start out hot anyway. But later in the year, you got to go to Ann Arbor, take on Michigan. You got to go to Madison, take on Wisconsin. I think there could be a surprise loss in there. There truly can. I mean, to be fair, like their schedule could be worse. So like they probably should end up at worst case scenario, a 2-loss team. But I don't think that's enough. I don't even know if we'll just with 1 loss, if that's going to be enough to get them into the Big 12 or Big 10 championship. So I don't read this for what it isn't. I think Oregon's incredibly talented. Penn State here at number 10. Penn State's been waiting years for the stupid to not be in the same division as Ohio State and Michigan, and now they just have this. Now they just have one big division as a conference. So it's like, okay, cool. Now we have a legitimate shot at a Big Ten championship game. No longer is Michigan and Ohio State the only teams that can compete in the Big 12 or Big Ten championship game, just some squishy team on the other division. I think Penn State's going to do well, man. I like the OC there. Thought he was a really good addition. I think he's going to help unlock Drew Aller because the tools are there for him. Texas got a relatively tough schedule, but they're a really good team. Even if they end up with 2 losses, they should make the college football playoff. Mizzou, they have one of the easier SEC schedules. I think worst case scenario, they're a 2-loss team. I think more than likely they're going to be a 1-loss team. They're going to go 11-1. They bring back a lot of talent on the offense, so I ain't worried. Notre Dame. No Ohio State on the schedule. Like, the schedule is not terrible for Notre Dame. They did a good job of bringing guys in through the transfer portal, whether it was like Bo Collins, Riley Leonard. They have a very good defense. Really, the only question, in my opinion, is the tackle situation. You lost 2 to the NFL and then 1 to injury. Are those guys going to be able to hold up? We'll see. Utah, man. I think Utah is probably the best team in the Big 12. You got Cam Rising, Brent Kuthi. They're coming back healthy. They have a hell of a good linebacking core in Lander Barton and Cornay Reed. It's just a good team. You got, Zayamiah? I forgot the corner's name. Zayamiah Fawn, I think. He's pretty solid. Like, it's a good team with, honestly, not a terrible schedule. Like, they get Arizona at home. They get Oklahoma State and Stillwater, but I think they could get past those 2 games. And if they can at least get past one of those games, they probably win out. So, yeah, dude, Utah's good. All right, let's run through the top 5 here real quick. Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, he has used the transfer portal to perfection, but he's also developed his own talent. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it wrong. But he's also developed talent through the transfer portal. You look at guys that he's gotten via the transfer portal that he's developed, like Jackson Dart, USL's Bentley. You got like Jared Ivey, JJ Peegs, Trey Harris. Like, now they also bring in like Juice Wells, Princely Umengaling. So this is a talent-rich squad. Alabama, it's hard to bet against Alabama, and DeBoer, I think, is going to do a good job in year 1. Their road schedule is a little tougher than yesteryear, but I think they can manage and, like, probably at the very least go 10-2, and that's probably good enough for the college football playoff. Because let's be honest, college football playoff committee, if you're SEC or Big Ten and you're only 2 losses, you're probably in. Everyone else is fighting an uphill battle. Michigan. This might be high for Michigan. We haven't really seen Alex Orji yet. I imagine he's a starter. I don't think they've settled on a starter just yet. So that's yet to be seen. If they have, let me know in the comments. But it's still a talent-rich team. They have so much talent defensively. Probably 2 of the best defensive players in the nation in Will Johnson and Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. You also got just Josiah Stewart, who I was a big fan of back when he was at Coastal Carolina. Last year, he was kind of in the rotation there. Now he's going to be a full-fledged starter. They bring in Jayshawn Barham, the former Maryland linebacker, who was under the tutelage of Navarro Bowman, who is now a linebackers coach under Jim Harbaugh. It's funny how stuff like that works. So, yeah, it's I don't know. Michigan's just hard to bet against. But your two best teams in college football, in my opinion, at least when it comes from a talent standpoint on the roster, it is indeed Ohio State. It is indeed Georgia. I think Ohio State's in a better place than they were last year with Kyle McCord. In Will Howard, they have two monster backs. They have a great defense. They returned a lot of starters. This is similar to when you saw a lot of guys return from Michigan last year. They end up going to the Natty, winning the Natty. This feels like Ohio State's championship to lose, you know? They invested so much money. Honestly, if this team doesn't have a strong run in the college football playoff, because I think Ryan Day could keep his job even if they lose the Big Ten, if they get to the national championship. But if they don't have a strong run in the playoff, then he's probably fired, right? With how much money they invested in bringing guys over, like, yeah. Georgia, they're just great. They develop well. It's one of the most talented teams in football. They return Carson Beck, who was pretty solid for him last season. He's arguably quarterback one for a lot of people in this upcoming draft. Even with Ra Thomas going bye-bye, good riddance. There's still a lot of talent at wide receiver, a lot of talent at tight end, a lot of talent on the offensive line. They do open the year at Clemson. Dare I say, I'm not worried. We will be doing that game for a watch-along. That's going to start off our 3-game slate of watch-alongs on Saturday. It's going to be Georgia, Clemson. But they do have to travel to Kentucky. They got to travel to Bama, Texas, Mississippi. Golly, that schedule is tough, but this is a team that's equipped for that schedule.